Professor of Demography at the University of Cape Town, Tom Moultrie, has expressed concern over the rise in the number of people who were uncounted during the 2022 census. The Statistician General Rusenga Maluleke released the census numbers, announcing that the country's population grew to 62 million in 2022. It also emerged that 31% of the population was not counted. Professor Moultrie joins us now to give us more insight on this. Now, Prof, good to have you with us this morning. You were involved in the run-up to Census 2022. You were the chair of SA's National Statistics Council. Now, we did actually talk to the Statistician General about the issue of undercounting. And what he says is that some adjustment factors were actually put in place to try and mitigate this. But you are saying that despite the adjustment factors and the mitigation, this number is still problematic. Why so?
Thank you very much. Just to clarify, I was not involved in the run-up to Census 2022, and I'm not the chair of the Statistics Council. But there are concerns. At the time of the census, and if you go back to 2001, the undercount then was 17%. In 2011, it was 14%, and now it's 31%. The Statistician General is correct when he says that mechanisms are in place to adjust the census for the undercount. Stats SA is to be commended for the fact that it runs a what is called a post-enumeration survey, which is a small-scale survey which tries to establish what the extent of the undercount is. And Stats SA is to be commended for doing that and publishing the results. What is a concern, however, is the quantum of the undercount. 31% of the population was estimated not to have been enumerated at the time of the census. And what that means is that the results of the census increasingly look like the adjustment factors which were put in place to scale up the enumerated population to an estimate of the population. And we have concerns that these adjustment factors are significant. Amongst countries which have run a post-enumeration survey and published their results, South Africa now holds the world record for the highest undercount documented amongst countries in those conditions. And so we think that there needs to be a careful examination of the process leading to what happened to cause the undercount in the first place, and then the adjustment factors which were derived.
Apologies, first of all, Mr. Moultrie, for that confusion a little bit earlier on. But let's get back to the numbers. Why is it important for these numbers to actually be accurate? You know, one of the things that came out is, yes, Gauteng still has the largest population, followed by KwaZulu-Natal, as well as the Western Cape. Why is it that these numbers actually cannot be compromised at all? And I'm thinking now specifically about the allocations of budget as well, which are some of the factors that are considered when looking at the numbers.
So the numbers matter, and we know that no census is ever perfect, and we accept that. In most developed countries which run censuses still, often an undercount of 1 or 2% is commonly encountered. But the numbers do matter. They matter firstly for the reason you've given, that they affect the equitable share formula, which is used to allocate resources from the national treasury to provincial governments. And so, for example, if the adjustment factors in one province are differentially higher or lower than those in another province, leading to an underestimation or overestimation of the population in that province, that will affect the equitable share formula. Also, numbers matter because the actual count is important for infrastructural planning. How many schools do we need? Where do we need to build hospitals? Public transport systems. Those questions require an estimate of the scale and the size of the population. And so while estimates of proportions derived from the census, for example, the proportion of people with water or the proportion of people with access to electricity, those proportions might well be relatively robust. They are not necessarily, the numbers still matter because that will affect how we see and plan the country's development going forward.
Now, Tom, one of the things that the Statistician General was quite emphatic about is that the adjustments that have been made would actually account for the uncounted people and the population, and that one can be confident about the accuracy of these numbers. What is your comment about that? Is there too much of a gap, do you believe, or can we go with what the Statistician General is saying?
I mean, theoretically, the Statistician General is correct. The post-enumeration survey should be able to account for the undercount in the population. What is concerning is the scale of that undercount. 31% of the population was not enumerated in the census. And as I said when I started, that means that the results of the census look increasingly like the adjustment factors which were imposed. So while in general, the post-enumeration survey process is important and does seek to accommodate that undercount. One has to ask whether the scale of the adjustments are in fact appropriate. If one is adjusting the population by 10%, that's a very different kettle of fish from adjusting the population by 31%. And so it is necessary to try and reconcile both the numbers of the population. We have estimates of the population from 2001, from the 2016 community survey, from other censuses, and we have a good idea of the births and the deaths, and so we should be able to get to a very good answer as to what we would have expected the population to be in February 2022. And our initial indications are that that population, as revealed in the census, is somewhat higher than we might have expected given prevailing rates of birth and death. And therefore, that leads us to worry about whether, for example, foreign-born South Africans were undercounted in the census, or whether the number of immigrants were not properly revealed. And I think StatSA has accepted that people often don't want to reveal themselves as foreign-born in a xenophobic society. But all the more reason that the results released last week on the census need to be subjected to particular scrutiny so that we know we do indeed have the best possible estimate of the population and its trajectory going forward.
Thank you so much for your time this morning. That's Professor Tom Moultrie. He's Professor of Demography at the University of Cape Town, saying, yes, the census was done. We do know that there is a post-enumeration survey that's also put together that tries to mitigate the numbers and the undercount. And he says, yes, even though that was done, still more scrutiny needs to be looked into.